Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So this morning at our regular Saturday morning communal breakfast that we have here in the monastery, it's when every resident, every guest from the entire monastery comes together for breakfast. It was quite formal for the monastic community. We wear our robes. We sit in order of seniority. It's a particular type of gathering, and often, if not always, there's either a Dhamma reading or a short Dhamma reflection offered near the end. And sometimes I like reading Ajahn Jayasaro's Yellow Pages. It's something, so our beloved teacher, Ajahn Jayasaro, who lives in Thailand. He's an English monk. Many of you know him or are aware of him, and he twice a week he sends out he writes these one-page Dhamma teachings, and on a yellow paper, yellow page, and he writes it by hand, and then he takes a photograph of it and he sends it out on WhatsApp, and other people pick it up and put it on websites and different things. It gets translated into various languages, including German and I don't know, a few languages, and posted on websites. And so this morning I read one. This morning's, it came out at about 6:45 this morning. It was sent, and he started by talking about Samadhi Nostalgia Syndrome. Samadhi Nostalgia Syndrome. And he says, and then he goes on, and I'm paraphrasing. So you might not be familiar with this or have heard of this. He says, because I just made it up. So I thought that was quite a nice little. He thought of this. So SNS, Samadhi Nostalgia Syndrome. And without going into overly into detail, but it's about that sort of. Oftentimes, as meditators, we have particularly, but not always, in the beginning of our experiences of meditation, when we're just starting out, oftentimes what can happen is, especially because it's new, it can be a real kind of, wow, that feels good. That feels good. And we can have what can feel quite, where it can either be profound or feel quite profound. And then we often, not all of us, but try to recreate that. Try and get it again and make it better, and make it okay. If that's my first time, wow. What if I keep doing this? And get more and more and more and more is what happens to a lot of us. And I know I totally fell into this trap in my early years of meditation. But what happened also is that after a few months, is that the sort of wow started becoming wow, less and less, because it also getting used to, or whatever it was those sort of very very nice experiences and things happened less and less until they just. Meditation it was just ordinary mindfulness, and so it felt inferior. It felt that I was losing something, and I kept striving, and so over the years I've met many people who have a similar, if not same, experience. I bump up against this a lot, and often when I'm speaking about this, in Q&As or leading retreats or things, I see people kind of sitting there going, yeah, I get it, affirming that maybe they've had that experience. So just this word nostalgia is interesting because it's looking at the etymology of it. So it probably one of the best translations is like homesickness. It's homesickness. When you look at the root of the words, the pain of the memory of home and comfort and or sort of what's familiar. And nostalgia for a sense that yearning and craving for trying to recreate a feeling or experience, the experience of in whatever way, shape, or form. So this is absolutely not saying that we shouldn't strive to develop our meditation. Absolutely, it's very important, crucial. But it's good I find, to just remind ourselves that in the Noble Eightfold Path, there's only 2 of the 8 folds are directly pointing at meditation. And that's the last 2, sati and samadhi. And I think it's also important, like this evening we chanted the Anapanasati Sutta, the mindfulness of breathing, in and out breath, is that we did get to the samadhi, to breathing in, develop the concentration. But it didn't come until it's around halfway into the stages of this meditation of using anapanasati, in and out breath. There's mindfulness, there's knowing, there's experiencing, there's all sorts of things, contemplating. There's a lot of activity going on, and so that the samadhahang, the concentrated mind, is one aspect. And so yes, to develop that, but it's also to maybe a lot of our experienced elders in our communities are more and more, in my perception, are refraining or staying away from the word concentration and more that collectedness, settledness. As Lumpur Pasano has been pointing out recently in his talks and Q&As, the word concentrate means to make small. And do we want to make our mind small? That's an interesting reflection. It's not to say one translation is right, one is wrong, but I find that interesting. But that collecting the mind, settling, allowing the mind to settle and be collected so that we can see. So these are as I keep reminding myself and others, these are our tools to liberation. They're not liberation in and of itself. The collected mind on its own it's not enough. But we collect the mind to see the mind at heart. So that settling, allowing this heart and mind to settle. But because meditation for many of us, especially in the West, I've only lived in Asia for 1 year, so I can't really speak about it, but for a lot of us, our entry point into spiritual life in this particular tradition, I can only speak of, is through meditation. For so many of us, and meditation is often for many of us, that entry point is through learning exercises, meditative exercises that are emphasizing samadhi and concentration. And so it's understandable that maybe especially in our early time, that will be our experience, but also our focus. And then, I think I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, is that then we start getting interested in Dhamma teachings and the actual reflective teachings of the Buddha. And it's through the reflective teaching. So this Anapanasati Sutta, it's just one sutta out of probably thousands. And these other ones, the reflective teachings, and so we need reflecting on experience and using Dhamma frameworks that in this case the Buddha offered, ways of framing or focusing our attention on the human experience with a settled heart and mind, so that we can see clearly, this vipassana, to see clearly into something, to see, is there suffering, and if there is stress, dukkha, discontent, disease, to see it and oh right, what am I hanging on to? So if we're overly focused on samadhi and overly grasping at the tool and not the usefulness of the tool. So to use the tool for what it was meant to be used for, to liberate the mind and heart. So the goal is liberation from suffering, liberation from pain. It's not eradication of pain, right? Pain is just part of the human experience. Joy is part of the human experience. Boredom is part of the human experience. Choose your mind state. Choose your heart state. There's this vast array of emotions and thoughts that we're going to experience. And liberation is to be able to be fully human and not have to just shy away from pain or get things the way we want them, so that we can not suffer. If that's our way of not suffering, then that's fragile. It's not complete. That's conditional peace and happiness. But the Buddha was pointing at this unconditional liberation. But going back to this word like nostalgia or homesickness, or we can even get nostalgic about situations that weren't actually satisfactory. Well, it was our comfort zone. We were used to it. And that's why I find personally that living in community, I was reflecting on this a little bit, I think at the mealtime today, meal gathering. Community life, we put ourselves into this, whether it's to live here, like the monastic community and our long-term lay residents, or to come as a guest or a visitor. It's not about coming and particularly about living here, about making it the way we want it, making it perfect, because we've got, let's see, about 20 people live here full time, and everybody's going to have I think it's safe to say a different vision of what the perfect monastery would be like. But it's to use the situation here, and the situations change. Protocols change over time. Some change more than others. Some more for a little bit. Some maybe don't really change hardly at all. But to utilize, instead of trying to make it perfect according to our temperament and wishes, is to utilize things that need to be changed. Absolutely. Yeah, if something's either really not working communally, or is unskillful, of course we have to change it. Whoa, don't let that creep in. But if we're just trying to make it the way we want it, each time we get what we want, I would say that's to our detriment. If it's just something to gratify ourselves, to satisfy our own way of seeing things, I would say that that's actually counterproductive, because then we're getting that little hit of, ooh, I got that. Often it's not even just about community, but oftentimes getting what we want, if it's something that's either unneeded or especially unwholesome, unskillful, boy, when we get it, boy, be careful. And I'm saying that to myself. I'm not saying this to everybody else in this room. I'm saying the same thing to me. Be careful. Because that each time we get that hit, that's that little birth of happiness. And where there's the birth of happiness, where there's birth, there's death. And when things change and we're not getting what we want, then there's suffering. So when we have those feelings of nostalgia, whether it's for meditative experiences, or whether it's for maybe we've lived in a whether we're living here or elsewhere, we have a life situation that's set up really nicely, everything's going our way, or at least well enough, and then things shift and it isn't that way. And it doesn't mean that we don't try to set things up again in a good way. Use past experience. That's really can be skillful, to use our past experience to get things set up. But just to be attentive, how far can we go? How far can we go? And how much does that have to go? Instead of, really using the flow of life. For us, like in the monastic community, the fact that we get to change communities, or whether we change community or we go just temporarily to live someplace, go even if it's just for a day visit up to Amravati, or whether it's for a week or so here, or go for 3 months. And one of the monks let me know that this morning that he's going to have the opportunity to go and live in one of our other monasteries in the spring, which is great. And Sister Jayasaro is about to head off for 2 months of pilgrimage in India, to change our situation, and so that it takes us out of our home. It takes us away from our comfort zone, and to experience something else. But if we go there, just especially going to live someplace, if we just try and kind of recreate what we just left, there we did it like that. I know I went through this when I first went to live as a junior monk to another monastery. Well, such and such a monastery like this. Well, we don't do it like that here. And so this is the way we do it here. And the way they were doing it there was perfectly wholesome. It was just different. But I liked the other way. And so that's a very worldly attitude towards spiritual practice. And so, but we get the opportunity to go live elsewhere, and it's which I think is one of the great strengths of this tradition. And so once again, to come out of our comfort zone, and it can expose attachments. Does that mean we just go someplace and keep quiet? No. Whether we participate, we might have some suggestions and things like that, but we're tracking where we're coming from around that. So but going back to this theme of samadhi, is that if we do see maybe a habit in ourselves of measuring our spiritual practice or progress, which I tend to stay away from that, thinking in those terms in my own life. Try not to look for or think of or measure progress. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I just know in myself it just doesn't work. We're trying to measure against something that we don't actually or we might not actually know what we're measuring. Like we can't, what are we measuring against? Enlightenment? Nirvana? There's not even, the Buddha wouldn't even describe it. Because it's an unconditioned state, you can't describe the unconditioned. He used words to point to it, but so many of them were using the via negativa, the way of negation. So the unborn, the uncreated, so non-suffering, non-clinging. He didn't say it's this or it's that. No, he says it's not this, it's not that. We're talking about, like, it's not self. The body is not self. Feelings are not self. He didn't say in the positive, he said what it wasn't. And so if we're trying to measure or things too much, or to look at our progress, especially if we look at it too carefully or too closely. But like somebody was saying this morning, I can't remember who it was, but saying that, maybe we just notice over time, certain things don't push my buttons like they used to. I'm not reacting negatively or strongly about things that used to really wind me up and bother me. I'm not responding unskillfully or getting spun out over things that used to bother me, or we might find that we're settling a little bit easier when things do go wobbly, because then life goes wobbly. Or that expression in English I like, go pear-shaped. And when things go pear-shaped. And so then instead of kind of looking for progress, it's more like just noticing. Noticing more calm and understanding and discernment. Not maybe measuring. Oh well, am I a stream enterer? Am I a once returner, non-returner? Am I an arahant? Or trying to measure: is this jhana, or is this access samadhi, or is it? But more using the really simple frameworks of is there settledness? Is there calm? Is there the presence of dukkha? Because oftentimes when we're measuring, we especially we're looking for spiritual progress, is that then doubt arises. And doubt is one of the great obstacles. What the Buddha offered us as a reflection is that doubt is one of the great obstacles to liberation. Doubt around awakening, doubt, just the reality of awakening, or doubt around the Buddha's awakening, the doubt that it even exists, but also doubt around just doubt, spiritual doubt. It's not mundane doubt, like not knowing how to do something, or is this the right way, or is this but it's more doubt around practice and our spiritual journey. Can be a great big obstacle, and that can happen in especially if we are trying to measure our progress, or try and put a label on our spiritual, if we're looking for attainments. Because even the word attainment, a lot of our elders who teach in English, they more and more refrain from using that word attainment, because when you look at the results of good practice, or the results of a spiritual practice, then wholesome results, it's more what's falling away. It's what's dropping. It's not what you're getting. It's what we see through. So, seeing through personality view, So if you look at the first of the 10 fetters, the first things that bind us, the 10 things that list of 10, if we're looking at personality view, it's not that we lose our personality. So it's the clinging to personality view is a problem. It's not having a personality. Sakkaya ditthi. It's not, and it's the clinging to body and mind and heart, and what we consider us. Well, this is the view of me. So it's not that, that we get rid of our body and get rid of our... No, that's not it. But we see through, we see what it actually is. Body and mind coming together according to causes and conditions. Personality is formed, it's conditioned. So does an arahant, does a fully awakened being just have no personality? It's not my understanding. And it's interesting when you read like the great disciples of the Buddha, which is I personally feel is a really lovely collection. It's put together from the suttas, and it's going through the Buddha and the great disciples. And it's interesting, it's subtle, it's kind of, but you see that the different personalities of the different disciples do come out in the. You got this one is like Venerable Ananda was seemingly always wanted to kind of help people and kind of smooth things over and things like that. And then you got this other one who was maybe a little bit direct and grumpy and kind of was a little bit was admonishing people. And then you've got Angulimala, who I'm named after. He was a mass murderer who became a monk and came back from his arms round all bloody and beaten up. And you got these different vignettes, and that show the different personalities of these great disciples. So, and they were enlightened beings, and they didn't lose their personality. Or maybe we meet somebody who's living right now that maybe they're considered to have fully completed the path and have realized the ultimate liberation, arahantship. And one, might have, maybe you've got two that we've met, and they might have completely polar opposite personalities. One might be even gregarious and kind of boisterous, and the other one might be just so quiet, just So that's not it. So that's just, I'm just picking on one of the 10 fetters, but this is, we're using the teachings, so using that calm, the collectedness of let's say samadhi, like I've been reflecting on this evening, using that to see our habitual ways of thinking and our habitual ways of reacting to things. Are we prone to certain habits and responses to things? Do we dismiss some of our responses? Maybe we've got some unwholesome, unskillful responses. Do we just dismiss them and use a little bit of maybe, I think I was reflecting on this about a month ago, do we just use maybe sort of spiritual bypassing techniques and relabel it and say, well, like maybe we're prone to a certain response to thing, and we just say, well, it's all not self, and it's all impermanent, and then not work on that unskillfulness, because we're losing an opportunity there. So maybe if we're prone to maybe a sharp response to certain things, if something pushes our buttons in ways that maybe we are prone to maybe a little anger or irritation that comes out. Anger and irritation. So irritation itself is very normal. But what do we do with these things? And do we just say, oh, it's not me, it's not mine, and then not work on it? Yeah, that's true. It's it's not self. Sankharas are not self. But we just got into a bit of a ding dong with somebody, and maybe we should go apologize. Maybe we should work on that as part of our way of being, and not just dismiss it by misusing Dhamma teachings. It's a very holistic. What the Buddha offered us is really holistic path. The Noble Eightfold Path it's a complete. It's so rich. And these other, the pivotal, especially the pivotal suttas, that's why it's good to be at least familiar with these things. We don't need to study them and become a scholar or anything, but to be at least familiar with these really key foundational teachings. And not just familiar with them, but then use them and not get maybe just into a rut of our practice. I know I've fallen into that many times, into that rut of just kind of meditation and okay, meditate in the morning, meditate in the evening, not develop that reflective, not develop the other aspects. So one of the things that Ajahn Jayasaro mentioned in his short Yellow Pages reflection this morning is that there's meditation, bhavana, and cultivating the meditation exercises and tools, but then there's a whole sila, ethical conduct, generosity, dana. And as a reminder, generosity is not just about giving things. There's so many ways of practicing generosity. Without even anything, just non-material generosity and it costs nothing. It costs absolutely nothing. But that generosity of spirit, generosity of heart, a generosity of service. That's why community life is such a rich opportunity to cultivate service. So I think that's probably enough. Just to close and wrap up again. To encourage all of us to really don't miss out on the richness and the breadth of these teachings. And to really to not make it complicated. That's I'm really not suggesting that, but to keep it simple. And to really utilize all the different, the different spokes of that Eightfold Path. To unpack it, to be enough familiar with it, to be familiar enough with the teaching of Anapanasati Sutta, that it's not just about mindful of the breath. We chanted it this evening. It's looking, contemplating, experiencing, contemplating impermanence, contemplating the cessation of suffering. Experiencing the mind, experiencing mind objects, really being able to utilize the richness and the vastness of these teachings without making it complicated. And we all have this opportunity, whether we're living here or we're practicing at home or whatever. So I'll close this talk here. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration through the goodness that arises from my practice. May my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world,
May the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless through the goodness that arises from my practice. And through this act of sharing, may all cravings and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and illusion be dispelled.